When you hear the term Jehovah's Witnesses, you probably think, yeah, those are those goofy, kind of silly people that have some peculiar beliefs. A little bit like watching interdimensional cable on Rick and Morty. You never really are sure what wacky, goofy character is going to pop on screen and titillate you next. But if you are so interested to do some more research into the religion and their practices and go full on Lewis Carroll style, follow the white rabbit all the way to Wonderland, then you're met with a really clear picture of an organization that is harmful. Now, all of this leads to the point of the video, and that is talking about one of the biggest questions surrounding Watchtower and their leadership. Let's get into it. Hello, my name is Wally and welcome to the JW Thoughts channel. If you're new here, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. We have a lot of cool content that we do that is similar to this. So if you enjoy this video, consider subscribing. I want to hit 10,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of the year, so your subscription would be very much appreciated. Now, with all of that being said, let's get into this. I personally feel that the biggest question surrounding Watchtower is, do the leaders, the tippy top of the organization, do these men understand that they are the leaders of a cult? Are they maliciously trying to control people's lives for their own gain? Or are they completely lost in their own sauce?
Fucking hell.
Just so delusional and have lived a deluded life where they've reached the point where they can't even detect a lie that's coming out of their own mouth. That's what we're going to talk about. Now, it's the age-old question, do they know what they are doing, or are they delusional? But I want to argue for both sides and then probably right down the middle. So, before we get into the exact arguments for either a way of thinking, one thing must be established. How the Watchtower functions. They are a upside down triangle pyramid. As you move up to the top, your information expands. So at the very basic bottom level, you're just studying with a Jehovah's Witness. We'll call that the very bottom of that. Your scope and your understanding of all of Watchtower's policies are going to be insignificant. You're not even going to be able to make an informed choice, and that's by design, because as you move up through different levels, whether that's becoming an unbaptized publisher, and then you get like a special book that you get to study, and that tells you even more of the rules. And then you become a regular publisher, and then you can become a ministerial servant and an elder, work at Bethel, a Bethel elder, a Bethel overseer, a helper to the governing body, and then eventually a governing body member. And through each and every one of those levels, your understanding, your information that you have access to grows little by little by little by little.
It's not a pyramid scheme. It's not even a scheme per se. I have to go make a call.
We also have further evidence of this point, as we have someone that became a governing body member and then eventually, for reasons of conscience, of morality, of wanting to just do the right thing, actually resigned and then was eventually kicked out of the entire organization. But as he revealed in his book, this was kind of the process. As he moved up through Watchtower, he had more and more and more access to information, and this information continued to damn the organization through their policies, their inconsistencies, their grasping at straws to try and find evidence for certain positions that they take. So why is any of this important? Well, to quote Francis Bacon, knowledge itself is power. And Watchtower leaders are potentially afraid of losing that power, or perhaps they've just grown so accustomed to it that they're comfortable with all of the power and knowledge that they contain. They want to be gatekeepers of everything, and they've literally designed the system. Now, the current leaders of the Watchtower organization have also adopted these policies, these practices, this sort of structure of the organization. So they could have just inherited it. But either way, we did need to bring this up because there is an argument that I have heard before, and it really made me scratch my head, that maybe they don't even really know what's going on, or maybe they're being controlled. That's just silly. So we're not going to be talking about that, because as you progress through Watchtower, your information you have access to and your knowledge of the history increases. And then once you get to the very tippity top, you'd be delusional to think that suddenly this process just stops at the very, very, very people that are making the decisions and keeping this sort of pattern in order. So the Watchtower leaders absolutely know everything that's wrong with the organization. They're fully aware of how they are perceived by the general public. They are fully aware of all of the letters, people writing in saying, well, this date is wrong, or you got this quote wrong, or you misquoted this source, or this doesn't make any scientific sense, or this actually doesn't match up with what's in the Bible. So they absolutely hear all of this. So we can't just let them off the hook and say, well, maybe they don't even really know everything that's going on. They absolutely know what's going on. So let us first delve into the question, are the governing body and their helpers, however you want to, set that bar, are they just delusional? So a very important question, at least in my mind, to ask is, why would the governing body keep such blatant, obvious, fact-checkable things as part of their doctrine if they were trying to manipulate and control people?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
So what I mean by this is there are, these misquotes. They have these historical blunders where they just simply get things wrong. A quick example is the entire world all agrees that Jerusalem was destroyed by the Babylonians led by King Nebuchadnezzar II on 586, 587. Sometimes the ancient calendars get a little bit goofy, but there is an incredible amount of evidence surrounding all of this. And yet Watchtower refuses to acknowledge this evidence. They go full-on Looney Tunes style. If I put my head in the grass, the dirt, the sand, no one will be able to harm me.
Now look what you've done. You've given him a complex.
They just go la 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 and pretend like it doesn't exist. And then they also try and attempt to have a rational, reasoned basis. So they do this weird star chart calculation, and you need the advanced algorithms that only the Jehovah's Witnesses have access to. And most scholars either would ignore this, or if it's brought to their attention, they might just laugh because, again, the Jehovah's Witnesses seem to be kind of goofballs to the general public. But why? Why on God's green earth, if you were trying to intentionally manipulate people and control them, and you had this master plan, full-on puppet style, pulling all of the strings, why would you have an obvious example? And there were people previously on the governing body, as I mentioned at the outset of this, in Crisis of Conscience, the book by a former governing body member, when they were trying to find evidence, and they couldn't. Just to bring in some context for the quote I'm about to read, the reason why this 607 date is important is because it is the backing and the reason why Jehovah's Witnesses think they are the only true organization being led by God and Jesus that exists on planet Earth. and that he chose them in a very specific date. Those dates initially surrounding 1914 and then eventually gets you to 1919. It's not a video about that subject, but if you want to know more, I do plan on doing a video breakdown of this whole thing at some point, but who knows if I'll ever get around to it. But with all of that being said, I just wanted to read you a quote from a president of the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. So this is a quote in that book that I mentioned earlier, from Nathan Knorr. And he said, "There are some things I know. I know that Jehovah is God, that Christ, Jesus, is his son, that he gave his life as a ransom for us, that there is a resurrection. Other things I'm not so certain about. 1914, I don't know. We have talked about 1914 for a long time. We may be right, and I hope we are." So, clear evidence that once you're at the very tippity top of this organization, there are conversations that are happening for a long time. As that quote I just read, Nathan Knorr said, we've talked about 1914, which is to talk about 607. We've talked about that for a long time. Are we right? I don't know. I hope we're right. And yet, the message that they give to ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses, the message that just the average rank and file witness, is absolute certainty. Zero doubt that 607 is when it was destroyed and 1914 is when Jesus made his invisible glow-up party here and eventually chose the Watchtower as his one true organization. So what does all of this mean for the question at hand? Well, why on earth would you ever keep a doctrine that you know is wrong? You know it's wrong. It can be proven that it's wrong. It has been proven that it's wrong. And you're constantly, for decades, getting letters and phone calls and reports from congregations and elders about people asking about this. If you were trying to be manipulative, that is a terrible strategy. You could definitely do an about face, because they do this all the time. They change their doctrines all the time, so people wouldn't all of a sudden start freaking out and leaving and in the masses if they said, you know what, this whole 607 thing, we've done some more research and new light. That's not when it was. They could just pull out the new light card, because they do this all the time. They are constantly changing their beliefs and flip-flopping around. I mean, they are a fully unhinged man that has decided he's no longer going to wear any undergarments. He's just going to be flip-flopping around all day long.
I'm out there, Jerry, and I'm loving every minute of it.
And despite them having intimate knowledge of exactly how many things within their doctrine are just objectively false, despite having that knowledge and knowing the negative feedback and knowing how people leave the organization because of learning about these things, they continue to stick with it. Now, in my mind, I think that is a pretty big piece of evidence for someone being delusional, to not have the necessary tools to become sufficiently self-aware, to realize that this is a bad strategy. If you're looking at it from a pure marketing standpoint, or just trying to be able to control people's lives. There seems like there's a better, a more clever solution if you were trying to be a evil, manipulative person. Now, also in that book, sorry to keep mentioning it, but it is a great example because we have someone that got up and walked out of the organization and said, peace out, see you later, drop the mic, I'm done with this. But he still details how for decades he was going along, even though he knew things were wrong, and still advancing through the ranks to all the way to becoming a leader of the organization, a governing body member. Despite his intimate knowledge, he still kept going. Now, what was the reason for it? He thought he was still doing good. His rationale was, well, this information and this lifestyle, this is still doing good for people. It's helping them become better people. So I guess I'll just keep going along with it. He had deluded himself into thinking that, the ends sort of justify the means, I guess, on this one. So we have an example already that exists of someone that was a leader in the governing body and also was aware of the problems, and he still kept going along with it until he hit his sort of breaking point. Until he got brave enough and was like, I can't support this any longer. He kept on going with it. Now, moving on to the other part of this. What evidence is there that the leaders of the Watchtower are completely aware of the harm they're causing and they're okay with it because they are trying to control and manipulate people? What is the evidence for that? Well, because we like to be balanced on this channel, we're going to try and provide both sides of the argument. So let's do it. Now, while there are many arguments that could be made for the Watchtower leaders, the governing body, to be malicious, evil, manipulating sort of people standing behind the scene, trying to influence people in any way they can, I'm here just to present the one that I'm going to present, and if there are others that you want to mention or talk about or discuss, please feel free to comment down below. But I think that a classic example of someone that is trying to manipulate you is controlling the narrative, trying to have a monopoly on information, details, opinions, and narrative, essentially, right? So they will try and get ahead of any perceived problem or issue by either doing the old ad hominem thing of just attacking the person and, oh, well, I bet all apostates are people that hate babies and want to run them over with their car, and they're liars, and they probably don't shower. And that's what Watchtower will do, just go with these personal attacks. And I think, just to put it succinctly, sorry, I'm rambling on a little bit, I'm trying to get better about not rambling, but I think, to put it succinctly, anyone that tells you don't talk to someone that has a differing opinion of me. Don't have a conversation with them. They will only lie to you. There's nothing to be gained from it. You're only going to be lied to. They're going to give you misinformation, and you are too stupid to handle hearing misinformation and forming an opinion by yourself. You are too mentally incapable of going down the very basic thought process of establishing whether something is true, likely true, or false. That is what Watchtower does. And if this sounds familiar to you, well, it's not just Watchtower that does this. A lot of very toxic people in the world, and not just people, organizations, companies, cults, whatever you want to name them, do this very same thing. They say, don't, please, You'll gain nothing from it. It's dangerous. It's a bad thing to talk to someone that is critical or disagrees with me. And that's exactly what Watchtower does and how they talk about apostates. They talk about apostates as these mentally diseased people that only want to lie to you. Their only goal is for them to lie to you because they're bitter and angry. They're bitter and angry apostates that are going to lie to you and try and get... Is the computer frozen? Did I just miss all of this? For fuck's sake.
Yes.
There is an argument to be made of whether or not they are even delusional in this tactic. They are almost feel forced to do it, or they picked like one or two examples of apostates, making things up, or actually lying to the public or lying to Jehovah's Witnesses. And they pick just those examples, when the vast majority of apostates, are sticking to the facts. They're sticking to logic and reason and saying, this is what happened. This is what's true or likely true. And you cannot have your claims also be true in light of these facts. So are you going to apologize? Are you going to change? Or are you just going to keep on saying the same thing over and over again and attack apostates for lying? So, what do I personally think? What's the Wally take on all of this? Well, I think the truth oftentimes lies somewhere between the spectrums that we create with our impulses and our curiosity and our research. And I think on some level, the Watchtower leaders are fully aware of all of the harm that they cause to human life, to people suffering. And I think that on some level, they have learned how to bury that knowledge and that pain. Because if you had to wake up every single day as being just a normal functioning human being, and you knew that your actions, your decisions were directly affecting people in such a negative way, and you just refuse to do anything about it, and you refuse to ever make a change, I don't like you. I don't think that you are a good person. And I think that you are at least responsible, because again, as we said at the outset, they 100% know the harm that they cause. So whether they're delusional or not, they're not off the hook, because they're still causing harm and doing nothing about it. But that's where the other argument sort of comes into play. And well, why then would they do this? Why would they maintain the stance they do? Why would they keep the policies that they do? And maybe it's because they just genuinely, truly believe that God is speaking to them and using them to direct his organization. Maybe they believe in the New Light doctrine. Maybe they have been in Watchtower for so long, they've been subjugated to the thought blocking for decades of their lives, that they've forgotten what it even means to be a regular, compassionate, empathetic, functioning human being in the real world. They've only been living this delusion, because you don't get to the heights of Watchtower without being pretty delusional. There has to be something. And the other thing is, I don't see how much they're gaining. Now, when I say that, I'm well aware that they enjoy a very comfy life. They get to fly all over the world and give talks and be treated like royalty. They have, fabulous accommodations and food or whatever. And something really powerful in life is being able to pursue something that you care about, that you genuinely believe in. And we can't say, there's no way that we can pretend that the Watchtower leaders, at the bare minimum, care so much about Watchtower. You only reach that height, you only get to that point when, sorry, ZZ is up on a shelf attempting to pull off the sound foam on the ceiling. So if you're wondering why I'm looking up, ZZ, don't do that. Here, why don't you come get a treat? Now that situation has all been accounted for. But yeah, you don't get to that point without having a deep passion and feel a sense of honor and personal pride that's directly attached to the organization that you've spent your entire life supporting. And they're in a position to be able to be a leader. They're in a position to be able to watch this thing that they've spent their whole lives pursuing and supporting grow and be at the and do all of these cool projects. So if we can't just say, well, they're not, taking $100 million and retiring to the Caribbean and that's the last we ever hear from them, so they're not evil. Well, they are also in a point where they get to have basically unlimited resources at their disposal to pursue projects that they truly believe in. Like, how great would it be if I told you tomorrow you can have hundreds of millions of dollars at your disposal for any project that you want to see through? You would be super pumped and excited about that. You would just be going hog wild knowing that that's a life dream of people. And it's a dream that they're living. They're able to pursue these passions and not have to try and really find ways to support it. They just get to do things, and every once in a while they come on camera and say, hey, our donations are looking a little low. Could you guys spare a couple bucks? And bada bing, bada boom, the coffers are full again and they're able to continue on with their life. So do I think that the delusion would make them any less responsible for the pain and suffering? Absolutely not. They are 100% responsible, even if they are delusional, because they do know the pain and suffering they're causing and refusing to do anything about it. This was my thoughts, not trying to bring in specific video clips and quotes and things like that, because it would have taken hours and hours and hours and hours to be able to sift through all of this information and study their body language and their responses to questions and all of that stuff. So I thought I would just do a video on the subject that could start the conversation, whether that's in your friend group, whether that's, hey, maybe in the JW Thoughts Discord server. A link of that will be in the description below. But anyway, I wanted to start the conversation. Let me know what your thoughts are on this subject in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. I very much appreciate it, and I will see you next time.